HOA Karen calls 911 Qs she can't use my land as a public road anymore. Let me tell you about the time my own private property nearly became a public highway until I shut it down and sent Karen, the HOA president, into a meltdown so bad she called the cops on me. See, I own a house at the end of a cul-de-sac, and on the edge of my land, there's a narrow gravel path that runs along the side of my property. It's nothing special, just a leftover access road from when the neighborhood was first developed. It's not public, it's not city-owned, it's mine. But that didn't stop the entire neighborhood, led by Karen, from treating it like their own personal shortcut. At first, it was just a few cars here and there, no big deal. But over time, it got out of control. Neighbors started using it daily like it was a legitimate road. People sped through at all hours, kicked up dust, and even left trash behind. And the worst part, not a single person ever asked for permission. Then, one day, I caught an Amazon delivery truck barreling through my backyard. Yeah, you read that right, a full-on delivery truck, tires skidding over my land like it was an official street. Apparently someone, I won't name names, but let's just say she's an HOA president with a superiority complex, told the drivers they could use my land to save time. That was it. I'd had enough. So I decided to put up a gate and block the path once and for all. No more free rides. No more Karen treating my land like it was part of the HOA's domain. Little did I know, that decision would send Karen into an absolute frenzy, so much so that she actually called 911 on me. The morning after I put up the gate, I stepped outside with my coffee, enjoying the peaceful quiet of a world where cars weren't tearing through my backyard like it was a freeway. For the first time in years, there was no sound of tires crunching over gravel, no dust being kicked up into the air, and no random delivery drivers treating my property like a shortcut to their next stop. It was perfect. But of course, it didn't last long. At exactly 7:14 a.m., I heard the unmistakable sound of heels clacking aggressively against the pavement. I didn't even have to look, I already knew who it was. Karen. And she was furious. I barely had time to set my coffee down before she stormed up to the gate, her hands on her hips, her face contorted in the kind of rage that only someone truly entitled can muster. She was practically vibrating with anger. "What the hell is this?" she snapped, jabbing a perfectly manicured finger toward the gate like it had personally insulted her. I took my time sipping my coffee before answering. Oh, that's a gate, Karen. Pretty common thing for private property." She inhaled sharply like I had just slapped her. "You can't do this. This is a neighborhood road. This belongs to the community." I raised an eyebrow. "No, Karen. It belongs to me. See that fence line? That's my property line. The road you and everyone else have been using. It's not a public road. It's private. And I'm done letting the entire neighborhood treat my land like it's a free shortcut." She looked personally offended, like I had just declared war on her way of life. "But we've always used it. This has been here for years. You can't just block it." I pulled out my phone, and with the smuggest smile I could manage, opened up the official property map I had saved. I showed her exactly where the boundary was clear as day. The land was mine. "See this?" I said, zooming in. "Not HOA land. Not public land. Mine. This shortcut existed before most of these houses were even built, but that doesn't mean it belongs to you or anyone else." Karen blinked rapidly, her brain short-circuiting as she desperately searched for a reason why she, of all people, should have the right to tell me what I could do on my own property. And then, like clockwork, she switched tactics. Instead of rage, her expression morphed into fake concern. She tilted her head, putting on her best condescending, reasonable tone. "Look, I get it. You're new to this community." I held up a finger. "Lived here longer than you, Karen." Her eye twitched. Right," she continued, as if she hadn't heard me. "But you don't understand how things work around here. This neighborhood thrives on community. We help each other. This road has been a vital access point for years, and you cutting it off is incredibly selfish." I crossed my arms. "Karen, let's be real. You don't care about community. You care about convenience. You don't want to take the extra 30 seconds to drive around the block like a normal person." She huffed, her patience clearly running out. "You don't have a choice in this. The HOA will make you take it down. I had to laugh at that one. Karen, the HOA has zero authority over my land, and even if they did, I'd still fight you on this. I'm not letting you or anyone else use my property like it's a public street. And that's when she completely lost it. Her face flushed red, and she started sputtering, half-formed words escaping in a mix of rage and disbelief. Then she pointed a shaking finger at me. You have no idea who you're messing with. I grinned. Oh, I think I do. And I think you have no idea who you're messing with. She clenched her jaw so hard I thought her teeth might crack, then spun on her heel and stormed back toward her house. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. Because less than 20 minutes later, I heard sirens. I was still enjoying my morning coffee when I heard the unmistakable wail of police sirens. At first, I thought maybe someone else in the neighborhood had an emergency. But then, as I walked toward my front yard, I saw it. A police cruiser rolling to a stop right in front of my newly installed gate. And standing there, arms crossed, was Karen, a smug smile plastered across her face like she had just won the neighborhood lottery. I sighed, already knowing exactly what was happening. She actually called the cops on me. As I approached, one of the officers, a middle-aged guy who looked like he'd seen his fair share of nonsense, stepped out of the car. His partner, a younger guy who already looked beyond done with whatever this was, followed. "Morning, officer," I said, keeping my voice even. "What seems to be the problem?" Before the cop could even open his mouth, Karen shoved herself forward like this was her moment to shine. "Yes, officer. I need to report a crime," she declared, pointing at me like I had just set her house on fire. "This man is illegally blocking a public road. He put up a gate without permission, and it's disrupting the entire community." The officer turned to me, his expression unreadable. "Sir, is that true?" I almost laughed. "No, officer. It's not a public road. It's my private property." Karen's smug look faltered just a little, but she wasn't done yet. "That's not true. That road has been used by this community for years. He can't just decide to block it off whenever he wants." I let out a slow breath, then pulled my phone from my pocket. "I figured this might happen," I said, pulling up the property records. "Here's the official plat map of the neighborhood. As you can see, this land is 100% mine. It's private property. The HOA has no jurisdiction over it, and neither does the city." I handed the phone to the officer, who took one look at the map, then sighed like a man who had been dragged into one too many HOA disputes. "Mom," he said, turning to Karen, "this is not a public road. He has every right to block access." Karen's face twisted into an expression of pure betrayal. But what about the community?" she stammered. "It's not fair. We've always used that road. That should count for something." The officer shook his head. "It doesn't. If the land belongs to him, it's his decision. You can't just claim someone else's property as your own just because it's been convenient for you." Karen's eye twitched. "But this is a safety issue." She tried again, scrambling for any argument that might work. "What if there's an emergency and someone needs that road?" The younger officer, who had been quiet up until this point, finally spoke up. "Ma'am, this is a cul-de-sac. There are multiple exits. This isn't a one-way street. If there's an emergency, first responders will come through the main road like they always have." Karen's face was now turning bright red, her breathing heavy. And then, in an act of pure desperation, she looked the officer dead in the eye and said the dumbest thing I've ever heard. "I want to press charges for obstruction." There was a brief moment of silence. Then both officers exchanged a look, like they were silently debating who was going to handle this absolute train wreck of a situation. Finally, the first officer turned back to me and said, "Sir, you're not in any trouble. You're well within your rights. We're sorry for the inconvenience." Then he turned to Karen, his patience officially gone. "Ma'am, you do realize that calling 911 for a non-emergency is illegal, right?" Karen froze. The color drained from her face. What? No, this is an emergency." The officer shook his head. "No, it's not. A property dispute is not an emergency. And if you keep misusing 911 services, you could be fined or even face charges for false reporting." At this point, Karen was spiraling. She opened and closed her mouth like a fish gasping for air, looking around as if anyone was going to back her up. But there was no one. Even her usual posse of HOA followers, who had started gathering nearby to watch the drama unfold, were backing away. Finally, Karen let out an exasperated screech, turned on her heel, and stormed back toward her house. The younger officer chuckled under his breath. The older one just sighed again, rubbing his temple before looking at me. "Sorry about that, sir. Have a good day." I smiled. "Oh, I will." As the cops pulled away, I glanced over at the gate, standing tall and firm, doing exactly what it was meant to do, keeping entitled people like Karen off my land. But I had a feeling this wasn't over. And I was right. Because Karen, she doesn't give up that easily. I knew Karen wouldn't let this go quietly. She had just been publicly humiliated, shut down by both the law and the neighbors who witnessed her 911 stunt. And now she was walking back to her house with her tail between her legs. But Karen wasn't the type to take a loss gracefully. No, she was about to escalate. The HOA declaration of war. 2 days after the police incident, I received an official-looking letter in the mail. At first, I thought it was from the city or something serious. Nope. It was from the Homeowners Association, signed, of course, by Karen. It was a formal demand to remove the gate. The letter claimed that my gate was an unauthorized obstruction that violated HOA guidelines and that I had 7 days to take it down or face legal consequences. I laughed. Hard. Not only was my land not under HOA jurisdiction, but Karen had zero legal authority to tell me what to do with my own property. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I ignored it. And that drove Karen insane. The neighborhood turncoat the petition's shame. The next day, I noticed something strange. A couple of my friendly neighbors, people I had always gotten along with, started acting different. One guy, who used to wave every morning, now avoided eye contact. Another neighbor, who had previously agreed with me that Karen was a nightmare, suddenly looked nervous when we crossed paths. I overheard whispers and murmurs whenever I was outside. Something was going on. Then, one evening, my neighbor Jeff, who I actually got along with, knocked on my door. He looked awkward, like he was about to deliver bad news. "Hey man," he started, shifting uncomfortably. "I just thought you should know. Karen's going door to door with a petition." "A petition for what?" I asked, even though I already knew. "She's trying to get the HOA to sue you." I burst out laughing. "Jeff, you know my land isn't HOA property, right?" He sighed. "Yeah, I know. But Karen's twisting the story. She's telling people that your gate is dangerous and poses a threat to the community." I blinked. "A threat? To who?" Jeff shrugged. "She's saying that if an emergency vehicle ever needs to get through, your gate could block them and put lives at risk." Now I was pissed. "So let me get this straight. Karen is trying to claim that blocking people from using my private property is a danger to the community." Jeff nodded. "She's exaggerating everything. And the worst part, some people are actually believing her." That's when I knew this wasn't just a petty HOA fight anymore. Karen was trying to weaponize fear and peer pressure to turn my own neighbors against me. I wasn't going to let that happen. A week later, I got another letter, this one marked urgent. It was a notice of intent to sue from the HOA. I rolled my eyes as I read through the ridiculous accusations. Unauthorized structure, not under their authority. Violation of community safety standards, made up nonsense. Failure to comply with neighborhood access laws, no such thing existed. And my personal favorite, disrupting the natural harmony of the neighborhood. I nearly choked on my coffee. Natural harmony. Since when did my backyard become some kind of sacred temple? This was peak Karen. But instead of panicking, I did what Karen didn't expect. I called a lawyer. And within 24 hours, my attorney fired back with a cease and desist letter, outlining all the ways their lawsuit would fail miserably. The HOA had no jurisdiction over my property. There were no legal requirements for my land to be used as a public access road. Their claims were based on false premises and held no legal ground. And the best part, I threatened to countersue for harassment and legal intimidation. Karen had been so sure she could bully me into submission, but now she was looking down the barrel of a real lawsuit that could actually cost her money. Suddenly, the petition disappeared. Neighbors stopped whispering. And Karen? She went completely silent. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like I had finally won. But Karen wasn't done yet. Because when lawsuits didn't work, she resorted to her most desperate act yet, straight-up trespassing. I thought Karen had finally backed down after the legal smackdown my lawyer sent her way. For a few days, the neighborhood felt peaceful. No letters. No threats. No Karen lurking around, pretending she ran the place. It was too good to be true. And I was right. Because when intimidation, petitions, and legal threats failed, Karen resorted to outright trespassing. It was around 11:30 p.m. on a Friday night. I was watching a movie when I got a motion alert on my phone. I had installed security cameras around my property months ago, not because of Karen, but because of general safety concerns. But tonight, they were about to catch something unbelievable. I checked the live feed, expecting to see a stray cat or maybe a raccoon. Instead, I saw Karen. On my property. In the middle of the night. And she was wearing dark clothes, not full-on ninja attire, but definitely I'm up to something sneaky energy. And what was she doing? She was trying to remove the gate. I stared at the screen, completely stunned. This woman had lost her mind. She was struggling with the lock, yanking at it like she thought she could just rip it off with brute strength. Then she pulled out a screwdriver. She actually tried to unscrew the hinges. I grabbed my phone and called the non-emergency police line. Yeah, I have someone trespassing on my property, caught on my security cameras, actively trying to remove my gate. And you're not going to believe this, it's my HOA president. The dispatcher must have thought I was joking, but within minutes, a patrol car was on its way. Meanwhile, I decided to have a little fun. Using the two-way audio feature on my camera, I cleared my throat and said, "Hey Karen, need some help with that." Her reaction? Pure panic. She froze, her head snapping up like a deer caught in headlights. Then, realizing she had been caught, she bolted full sprint, arms flailing, knocking over a potted plant on her way out. She was so panicked that she ran straight into the police car pulling up in front of my house. I stepped outside just in time to see two cops step out of the car and approach a breathless, red-faced Karen. "Mom, we just got a call about trespassing. Can you explain why you were on this property?" Karen, still trying to catch her breath, immediately went into defense mode. "This is all a misunderstanding. I was just checking the gate, making sure it was safe. I had a complaint from a neighbor." One of the officers turned to me. "Sir, do you want to press charges?" I didn't even hesitate. "Absolutely." Karen flipped out. "You can't DO this. I'm the HOA president." The officer barely reacted. "That doesn't give you the right to trespass." Then, the golden moment happened. The younger officer asked, "Mom, did you have permission to be on this property?" Karen hesitated. Then she actually said, "I don't need permission. The HOA has authority over all neighborhood structures." I couldn't hold back a laugh. The officer raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, this isn't HOA property. It's private land. And you were caught on camera attempting to remove someone else's gate. That's trespassing and attempted vandalism." Karen's face went pale. "You don't understand. This is a community issue. He's disrupting the flow of traffic. The HOA has rights." The cop shook his head. "The HOA has zero say over this property. And right now, you're the one breaking the law." Then, before she could dig herself deeper, the officers put her in handcuffs. Yes, Karen got arrested. Right there, in front of my house. I watched as she was put in the back of the squad car, still screaming about her rights and the neighborhood's needs. By the next morning, word had spread like wildfire. The HOA board who had once stood behind Karen was suddenly scrambling to distance themselves from her. By Monday, an emergency HOA meeting was called. Karen didn't show up. Because, well, she was still dealing with legal issues. And by the end of the week, the HOA formally removed her as president. Turns out, trespassing and attempted vandalism weren't great leadership qualities. A month later, Karen put her house up for sale. Apparently, once she lost her Queen of the HOA status, she had no reason to stay. And just like that, she was gone. The neighborhood, much quieter. The gate, still standing. And me? I slept like a baby knowing that Karen's reign of terror was officially over. Because no matter how much she tried to control everything around her, in the end she couldn't take what wasn't hers. And the best part? She had to take the long way around on her way out of the neighborhood.